2020, oh 2020, oh 2020. COVID-19, oh 2020, oh 2020.
Hello, I'm Vernon Odom. The coronavirus pandemic has upended every aspect of American life. Children and families have faced incredible challenges.
It's also been a very different world this year for us at Healthy Newsworks. Everything had to move from the classroom to online, but Healthy Newsworks has continued its important work and given students like me opportunities to learn and express what this year meant to our schools, our world, and probably most importantly, to us.
Tonight, we'll get a glimpse of that as we celebrate and support Healthy Newsworks, its students, families, teachers, staff, and a year of doing the undoable.
Normally, Healthy Newsworks would be right with us in the classroom, but of course, we couldn't learn in person. Instead, the Healthy Newsworks teachers worked virtually with our classroom teachers to give us the same experience. We learned how to interview interesting people. We learned how to tell fact from fiction, conduct interviews, and we learned how to write accurate articles for our schoolmates and families, but it was all online.
This year was certainly a challenge, but it was so rewarding for all of us at Healthy Newsworks. It was a time for students, teachers, and staff alike to test ourselves in the virtual world and continue to grow our program. We launched new Healthy newspapers at William Rowan Elementary School, the DePaul Catholic School, and Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church. We also continued our programming at 9 other schools in Philadelphia and Norristown. We expanded our curriculum for our youngest reporters, ages 5 to 8, and we created By Kids for Kids, our new digital platform, with reliable health articles, illustrations, and insights by elementary and middle school students. It will be a game changer, allowing Healthy Newsworks students and kids everywhere the ability to share important health information with their communities.
We focused directly on the pandemic. Healthy Newsworks reached out to people working in the healthcare, to the food industry, from the arts to sports. They were willing to share their experiences with us and how they coped during the pandemic. We also learned how they help people who depend on them. With our research and curiosity and the guidance of Healthy Newsworks and our teachers, we developed our own questions for interviews.
How is it possible that companies could create and distribute a COVID vaccine so quickly?
What has the church done, and what is the church doing to help the community?
What do you do to keep your mental health positive during this pandemic?
After the interviews, the team guided us through writing, editing, and revising our articles so that our fellow students and families could also learn from the conversations.
The production of Healthy Newsworks' annual book, Leading Healthy Change in Our Communities, also changed. The book had to be produced virtually. Our reporters explored the pandemic not just through the interviews, but through their own reflections and drawings. This cover and several of the drawings are done by Maribel, an 8th grader at Amy Northwest, who shows so much of what everyone experienced through her art.
What inspired me to create the book cover was that not only was coronavirus affecting our health, but also was affecting our lives by social distancing and online learning. I wanted to draw a drawing that was able to convey that message. This book is a living diary of this very difficult year. We have recorded what we gained and what we have lost. It gives us student reporters and readers a way to understand the year, to learn, to feel sad, and to grow. And through our report tonight, through this event, we want to share it with you as well.
Coming up tonight, you'll hear from some of the people our reporters interviewed this year, starting with the health leaders and frontline workers who played such important roles during the pandemic. You'll learn how business, media, and the arts changed this year, and how sports adapted to a new way of life. You'll also hear from experts dealing with pandemic's emotional impact, and we'll spotlight our teachers who kept their focus on their educational mission, despite enormous challenges. Woven throughout, students will, in their own words, share what they've endured, learned, and accomplished during COVID-19. That's why we're launching our Text to Give challenge tonight and ask that you help support Healthy Newsworks' continued important work. We have a goal of raising $60,000 through the spring fundraising appeal. We need to raise $10,000 to reach our goal and want to close the gap. We would be grateful if you would consider a donation to support Healthy Newsworks. To donate, text HEALTHY to 243725. You can also donate at our website, healthynewsworks.org.
Hi, I'm Diane Davis, Community Outreach Manager for Healthy Newsworks. On behalf of the Healthy Newsworks Board of Directors, its leadership, staff, and volunteers, we'd like to thank you very much for joining us this evening. We hope you'll gain a deeper understanding of Healthy Newsworks and the important work that we do with the extraordinary young reporters that you're about to see this evening. I can't imagine that you won't. Now, before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors who are sponsoring Healthy Newsworks at this event with a special shout out. Phillies Charities, which sponsored a significant grant for our 2021 book, Einstein Healthcare Network, our community healthcare champion, and Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church. Now I'd like to turn the program back to Vernon Odom.
Our first interview segment features experts at the forefront of pandemic science and medicine, including epidemiologist Dr. Michael Osterholm of the University of Minnesota, Merck CEO Kenneth Frazier, and Dr. Paul Offit, Director of the Vaccine Education Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Dr. Osterholm told Healthy Newsworks reporters that 3 years before COVID-19 emerged, he wrote a book that predicted a pandemic in the near future.
What none of us could see, however, was that this would be caused by a coronavirus, not an influenza virus. There are times now where I feel like I know less about this virus than I did 6 months ago, as we learn new things about it.
Did you expect to see COVID to reach every end of the world? Why or why not?
We're seeing it spread across the world in an uneven way. And what I mean by that is some areas will get hit particularly hard for several months, while other areas seem to be spared. And then those areas that seem to be spared get hit.
When do you expect this pandemic to end, and how will it end?
We're not sure how it's going to end yet. I don't believe that we're going to continue to see it occur in such a way as to, challenge civilization at all. But at the same time, I think this is a virus that's now here. It's going to be here for a lot of years to come. We're not done. There's going to be influenza pandemics yet to occur. I think everyone now is well aware of the fact that there may be additional new coronaviruses that could emerge. Just because we have some protection against this one doesn't mean we'll have it against others.
What do we have to do to be better prepared next time?
We have to be prepared for these viruses by having the infrastructure, the basic capacity to make vaccines very, very quickly and get them out to people very quickly.
Merck, the nation's largest vaccine maker, expected to have a COVID vaccine. But when its own product fell short, Merck took a rare step.
What was your motive in deciding that Merck should partner with Johnson & Johnson on its vaccine? Has Merck ever done something like this before?
So the answer to your question is no, we've never done anything like this before. But then again, society has never had any situation like the pandemic before. So we had to ask ourselves how we could actually make a contribution. And we were working on 2 different vaccines. And after the first couple of messenger RNA vaccines came out by Moderna and Pfizer-BioNTech, they had such a high degree of effectiveness. Our vaccines did not seem to produce the same immune response. So then we had to ask ourselves whether or not we were willing to help another company that appeared to have a better vaccine, or whether we were going to continue to work on our own. And so that comes down to not having too much pride in some ways. And we decided that our role was to contribute to the solution to this pandemic as quickly as possible. And that meant helping Johnson & Johnson make their one-shot vaccine and converting 2 of our plants to make that vaccine.
What has been your most important job to maintain the company throughout the pandemic?
And I would say the hardest part of doing my job during the pandemic is trying to keep 70,000 people inside Merck working together when they've been forced to be apart. I've had to learn that when I have meetings with people and I ask them how they are, I have to really be prepared to sit down and listen to what's really happening in their lives.
Hi, I am Sam of the Amy Northwest Healthy Bulldog. Along with Sarah of the East Norton Bulldog Bulletin, I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Paul Offit, who is on the panel advising the CDC on vaccine approval.
How do you think the COVID vaccine will affect making other vaccines against other diseases?
That's a great question. I mean, what we're doing now is we're introducing all these genetic vaccines. And it's not just the messenger RNA. There'll be DNA vaccines. There'll be the so-called replication defective. We're going to learn a lot about these different technologies to see whether we can apply them to things like making an AIDS vaccine or making a malaria vaccine or making a better tuberculosis vaccine or making a universal flu vaccine.
Healthy Newsworks reporters also talk with a team from Quest Diagnostics. Diana Motti, Sharon McClintock, and Jane Reedy described how almost overnight they went from doing routine blood tests to handling thousands of coronavirus tests. The reporters learned firsthand about caring for COVID-19 patients from Lorraine Brown, a registered nurse at Einstein Health who cared for hundreds of them.
And we heard from a critical care doctor, Dr. Sharma of Einstein Health, on how she navigated those early weeks of the pandemic.
In a moment, our students share their experiences. But first, meet a former reporter.
Hi, I'm Kayla. You may remember me from last year's Healthy Newsworks celebration. I had the opportunity to interview Dr. David Kessler, who is now working with President Biden to help get the vaccines out to everyone in the country. That experience made a big impact on me and helped me to gain interview skills and confidence. I would like to thank everyone for supporting Healthy Newsworks with a shout out to Einstein Healthcare Network. Now, I'd like to share a message from Einstein. Einstein Healthcare Network salutes our communities for helping keep each other safe. Thank you for continuing to mask up, for hand washing, practicing physical distancing, and getting vaccinated. And a special congratulations to Healthy Newsworks on the 10th book written and illustrated by students. We're proud to be a community healthcare champion.
Thank you, Kayla. At 7 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, you can view a copy of our 2021 book on the Healthy Newsworks website. It's very exciting. If you'd like to purchase the book or a poster, please go to our website, healthynewsworks.org. Our book will be available until June the 1st. We will be donating copies of the book to our schools, student authors, and illustrators who helped create this book. I also want to remind you that we have a goal of raising $10,000 this evening to this Text to Give challenge and appreciate you being as generous as you feel comfortable. To donate, text HEALTHY 243725. We so appreciate your generosity. Thank you.
Oh, 2020, oh, 2020, oh, 2020.
It has been rewarding being at home and working virtually. There isn't the rush to school and the tight scheduling of class, but I miss my friends. I like face-to-face rather than virtual classes.
I want to go back to school. I'm missing my friends in person, and I also miss the teachers.
I relished in the opportunity to argue and challenge their opinions. I didn't even realize how isolated I was feeling until I was able to talk to them in a creative, intellectual setting once again.
This year, I did not see anyone walking around in costumes or passing out candy. It made me feel sad because nobody was really around.
I made my baseball team, and I was so happy, and a lot of my friends play on the team. We did get to play, but everyone had to wear masks.
This year, summer has been very different. I usually can see my friends more, go to parties, and interact with people. But now I can barely do that. And when I do, I have to social distance.
We stayed inside, but my mom and Nana made it feel special because we carved pumpkins and placed a candle inside of them.
This isn't like any summer we have ever had. The coronavirus is going to impact our daily lives for a very long time, and I'm very sad about that.
The most challenging thing has been not being able to be around family and attend family events.
Coronavirus, please go away.
Healthy Newsworks students also learned how the pandemic changed businesses and the people who run them. When COVID-19 shut down Philadelphia's restaurant industry, award-winning chef and restaurant owner Michael Solomonoff reinvented his business. The reporters ask him how he's been able to help others during the pandemic.
How have you kept everyone safe, both your customers and your employees?
Well, we tried to make our company better, and that means increasing the minimum wage for our employees to $15 an hour, and also doing as much donation and philanthropic stuff.
Has your job been easier or harder since the pandemic happened? Why or why not?
For every month that the pandemic goes on, the guidelines are a little bit different. So I think that not only do you have to do your job, which is as a business owner is, you're doing many jobs, but the fact that you also have to deal with things that are completely out of your control certainly makes it more difficult and possibly more stressful. The greatest challenge during the pandemic is really just maintaining a positive attitude. I think that's really the only thing that you sort of have control over.
Erica Keith, a supermarket customer service representative, described how she and her ShopRite team are pitching in to do whatever is needed.
There are many employees who are now taking responsibilities in different departments or making it work as much as we can to satisfy our community.
At the same time, Ms. Keith is also dealing with the pandemic's effect on her own family.
I have 5 children, and they're not in school. They're doing it virtually, 100% from home. And that affects them because they really don't have a social life with their friends any longer. I do have 2 that went into new schools the beginning of the year. They haven't seen their building yet. So it's a little disappointing.
Journalists like Perla Laura, editor-in-chief of the Spanish-language Impacto, found themselves both covering and being part of the big story. The toll it took on her staff took special empathy.
What have been the challenges of reporting on the pandemic?
Some of them lose parents or, uncles, or they was sick. We have 3 or 4 people from our team who actually, get infected. Many of them have, crisis, like a mental health crisis.
But Lara believes she and many staffers, as immigrants, were used to overcoming big obstacles.
What do you do to keep your mental health positive during this pandemic?
In each problem I face, in that moment, maybe it's frustrating sometimes, but when I resolve that new challenger, I feel like I'm, more empowered.
We also learned about the creativity and resilience that emerged during the long lockdowns. A viola player for the Philadelphia Orchestra told us how she made music from her basement. Ryan gave us an example of her artistry.
And now, on with our story.
We interviewed children's book author Lisa Klein-Ransom, and many of us reviewed her book, Germs, for our school newspapers. For Sydney Brown, Philadelphia's youth poet laureate, being immersed in poetry helped her both understand and articulate feelings about this complex year.
The past year also brought unheard of changes to sports. In fact, former Eagles safety Malcolm Jenkins told Healthy Newsworks it was the strangest of his 12 years in the NFL.
How did it feel not to have your fans there to watch you play?
And it was the first time I heard the gears from the goalpost when they raised the net, when getting ready to kick a field goal, they raised the net behind the goalpost. I could hear the gears squeaking. And I never heard that before because the stadiums have never been that quiet. Having to get in shape to be ready for training camp while training at home was unique. But then even once we got into the building, as we follow all of the protocols, where we can't even be in the same meeting room together.
Jenkins says the pandemic took an emotional toll.
What do you do to cope in a healthy way with stress and anxiety?
I was somebody who already was dealing with stress and anxiety before 2020. And so when you had the pandemic hit and everything else that came with it, it definitely took my anxiety to another level. And so I talk to a therapist every week.
Can you tell us how going to therapy makes you feel better? What does your therapist do that is helpful?
Yeah, I think, most people feel better when they don't feel like they're alone in whatever they're going through. And a lot of times, I know for me at least, when I get depressed or I get anxious, I tend to isolate myself.
What advice do you have kids who may be struggling with anxiety or depression?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is don't be ashamed of it. But the only way really to kind of move through it is to ask for help.
What lessons have you learned from living through the pandemic that might help you and others in the future?
How important it is to prioritize those people that you love.
For Philly strength and conditioning coach Dong Ling, one big challenge was in creating major league workouts for the players without a pro gym.
How has your job changed since the start of the pandemic?
You learn to work in that garage gym. I don't have all the heavy weights, but what I do have is a backpack that I could fill with books. I could fill with canned goods. And you ever carried detergent for your laundry? It's heavy, right? I even used a suitcase once, my carry-on suitcase. I would just load it up full of items from tennis balls to whatever it was deemed heavy. Clothes can add up to be very heavy.
How do you feel the pandemic has affected players physically and mentally?
We had to use a lot of Zoom calls to communicate with them, to encourage them to keep training hard, while being away from each other.
Outside his office, Dr. Hardy's dream of making the U.S. Olympic marathon team also faced big changes.
What have been the challenges of the pandemic for your marathon training schedule?
It's been hard to train with the people I normally train with. And so now I've been doing most of my running by myself. And then also gyms have been closed. So it's hard to kind of set a goal in a race when there aren't really any races available to do.
Has it made it easier or harder to stay dedicated and motivated?
All challenges, all adversity really makes you stronger. It'll make me a stronger runner. I think the pandemic will make me a stronger person in general.
I learned that I need to take a break. The pandemic has taken a really hard mental toll on me. A lot of personal things happened because of it, and I was just sad a lot of the time. But with the help of my family, they helped me to climb this mountain.
Comparing my life to a year ago, a lot has changed. A year ago, I didn't realize how much I didn't know about my family. I've gotten to know my family better. For example, my mom thought she knew what I liked, but when I asked her, she really didn't know. Over time, she started to see some of my interests, and I started to see hers.
I would tell my grandchildren, grandchildren, that I lived through a very serious historical event and survived. I am also going to tell them how easy they have it, like older generations tell us.
The main part that I learned was take care of yourself and family. And friends are obviously the most important thing in this very short life of ours. Cherish them and keep them close.
We'd like to thank our Benjamin Rush Society and Leadership Circle donors for their support. We deeply appreciate your support. Your help makes it possible for us to donate copies of our 2021 book to our schools, the student authors, and the illustrators. At 7 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, you can view a copy of the book on the Healthy Newsworks website. If you'd like to purchase the book or a poster, go to our website, healthynewsworks.org. The books will be available until June the 1st. Remember, we have a goal of raising $10,000 this evening through our Text to Give challenge. To donate, text HEALTHY to 243725. You can also donate to the Healthy Newsworks website. Thank you so much for your generosity. I will now turn the program back to Mr. Odom.
Helping those in need became an even bigger challenge in 2020. The lightning-fast spread of the virus literally made touching and comforting the suffering dangerous. Millions who lost their jobs needed food help for the first time.
Healthy Newsworks reporters talked with Patrick Walsh of the Martha's Choice Food Pantry. He told us about the huge demand for food and how many people were hungry and new procedure the food pantry used to make sure everyone was safe from the virus.
Kevin Carter of the Uplift Center for Grieving Children shared his insights on guiding children through the sadness of dealing with COVID-19. For houses of worship, where so many in crisis seek spiritual comfort, there were changes too. Sanctuaries sat empty. Reverend Alan Waller of Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church told Healthy Newsworks that sermons by video conference help. But
what is the biggest change you've had to make during your congregation during the pandemic?
When I go to church on Sunday morning to preach, the whole church is empty. So when I preach, I don't see people. I don't hear anybody responding back to me. That's the biggest change because in our context, a lot depends on being with the people, and I say something and the people say something back to me. I've been focused around trying to help people stay encouraged while we're going through this change.
What is the church doing to help the community?
We have really worked to be a blessing to people. We've actually helped people get food, and we actually have given money to other organizations. When you are good to other people, God returns that goodness to you.
Young Americans haven't only endured a pandemic, they've been witness to a historic time of social and political reckoning. The death of George Floyd, the 2020 presidential election, a rise in attacks on Asian Americans, and challenges to voting rights. Our reporters were well aware of what was going on in the world around them.
The moment that stands out to me is when Joe Biden won the election and is going to be our president for 2021. I don't understand why the rioters did what they did. I don't understand their goals because, sure, they stopped the voting count for a couple of hours. However, they would not be able to stop it forever or change the outcome.
Have you seen the landing of Perseverance? The date was Thursday, February 18th, 2021. I felt like I was in the rover in person, but no. I was sitting on my couch, waiting, and even more waiting to see what will happen next.
The riot was a horrible event that should never ever happen. I am disappointed that there were that many people that went through with this riot and thought this was an okay thing to do and the right thing.
Seeing the people that build and program the Perseverance, biting their nails, getting up and out of their chair, shaking, sweating, terrified, thinking, well, the Perseverance will land safely. I was shaking in fear just like them. But when they heard that the parachute opened, I could see the smiles on their faces. I started to smile too. I felt like the landing was going to be a huge success. I was daydreaming about them finding life on Mars.
Healthy Newsworks reporters gained insights from two seasoned leaders on confronting racial issues head on. Dr. Howard Stevenson, a psychology professor at the University of Pennsylvania and an expert on racial trauma, shared important tools for understanding how COVID-19 affected communities of color.
Having disparities where we have less resources to manage crises, our stress levels have gone up, and our stress levels affect your physical, emotional, and cognitive health outcomes.
He also recognized that when the country has been angry, that anger has been taken out on people in violent ways. In particular, he said,
Asian Americans have been more likely to experience public violence now because of the negative narratives about the virus, as if it was a China virus.
One reporter asked Dr. Stevenson an important question that is on a lot of our minds.
What can we do that would be positive in our community?
Stevenson cited one of his programs, which uses everyday activities.
By engaging in those communal activities that affirm our differences, that affirm our voice and style of expression, where you could be in spaces where nobody critiques you because of your skin color or your hair texture or the way you walk or talk. Those places are healing spaces. Sometimes they're barbershops, believe it or not, beauty salons. Sometimes they're churches. Sometimes they're sports teams. But where can you be your cultural self without having to look over your shoulder? We have trained black barbers to be health educators to black men between the age of 18 to 24.
Another student asked Dr. Stevenson a question that bothers many of us.
What is one thing that people can do to stop the police from killing African Americans?
So we know a lot now about how people overreact in racial moments. And we are hoping to teach police those strategies. Even the barbershop folks that we work with and coaches, we teach them to calculate, locate, communicate, breathe, and exhale. But I think police reform has to go even beyond training, right? There has to be way more accountability. We also have to connect police to these communities, more tied to these neighborhoods.
The reporters also asked Dr. Stevenson about his motivation to talk in front of people.
You can't fight all the time, but you can't be silent all the time either and expect to change the world.
Ken Frazier, the CEO of Merck, is using his leadership position to change racial and economic disparities. He's been opposing voting restrictions, and he's leading an effort to help 1 million Black Americans attain good-paying jobs over the next 10 years.
How has the pandemic changed you as a CEO and as a person?
What the pandemic has done is it's shown me the importance of caring about people who have less than I have. The pandemic has not affected all people equally. It has affected the people who were struggling before the pandemic even more than the other people. So it's made me much more aware of the differences in our society and the fact that we need to do something to close those gaps.
Should businesses get involved in politics?
I think businesses have no choice but to get involved in politics to some degree. I think those of us who run businesses have to be careful. We can't get involved in every political issue, and we have to decide which of those issues are we going to get involved in. So from my perspective, I actually think that society expects businesses to take a position on some political issues. And I know a lot of my fellow CEOs disagree with me about that. A lot of people believe what they used to say, which is the business of business is business, and you should not pay any attention to what goes on around you. I happen to believe that businesses are citizens, that they live in the same democracy as everybody else. And if we allow our society and our democracy to become toxic or poison, in the long run, it's going to hurt business.
What is your next step in trying to stop state legislators from enacting laws that will make it harder for Black and other minorities to vote?
What I've been doing is I've been trying to get businesses in the states where these laws are being proposed and passed to take a stand with respect to those state legislatures, because those state legislators, the people who run in those state legislatures, often they get significant amounts of campaign donations from businesses. I've been saying that you should not just go to the seat of government and ask for things that just help your business. You really ought to be supporting democracy at its core. And at its core, to me, that really means that every citizen who's eligible to vote should be able to be confident that they can cast their vote freely without any obstacles or interference. And it also means that they should be confident that their vote will be counted. And a lot of these laws that are being passed around the country right now have as one of their purposes to make it harder, not impossible, but harder for certain voters, including Blacks, to vote. And we are saying to companies, you ought to speak up, you ought to say something to the people who you contribute to, and you ought to hold them accountable for what their real purpose is.
Teachers are among the unsung heroes of 2020. Instead of one classroom, they work from their own homes, directing their efforts at dozens of little screens, continually reinventing lessons and sometimes dealing with wonky technology. We honor them tonight by hearing their stories.
Felt like teaching as I knew it was flipped upside down.
The biggest challenge was really keeping connection with all the students.
It's just how we were going to get the tools to the students that they needed, being that we were at home and they were also at home.
They're doing class at home. They've got people in the house making noise, and getting them into school and not paying attention to all of those things has been the biggest challenge.
Students rarely turned on their cameras while we were having class, and many of them often just communicated through the chat.
We recognize that this has not worked for all of our families, and we know that we're going to have to continue to work really hard to close that gap.
It was just a challenge trying to get the students to participate, but knowing that we just had to keep going. We had to continue teaching. We had to continue pushing forward.
So all of my lessons had to be recreated and tailored for the virtual learner. But it was a lot of newness at once, if that makes sense. So it was very overwhelming, but I just told myself each week I just learned something new and integrated it.
My younger and newer teachers who are just like tech geniuses were like walking some of us more senior people through, like, this is what you can do using this.
Zoom has opened the opportunity to bring guests into the building that we couldn't bring before.
But then I also went live on location in a lot of places.
A lot of books that we read were books that I found online. We listened to a lot of read-alouds instead of me actually reading books.
But when I would pop into their Google Meet for library time and they would get excited, I was like, yay!
The students, some of them have soared in this learning environment.
My kids up and dancing and moving.
We have probably had more family meetings this year remotely than we've ever had physically in person.
You know, we saw an amazing amount of collaboration and support from the families that we serve.
I'm so happy about the relationship that I formed with these students. I'm so happy with the relationship that I formed with these families this year.
When you work in unfamiliar territory, it causes you to be on top of your game. In a lot of ways, we've seen some better teaching than we had in years past.
I feel like I've grown so much as a teacher over the last year, and it helped me to realize I am able to handle much more than I thought I could.
I'm glad that I was able to push myself to new technology heights, to push myself to new creativity, to keep the students engaged.
Learn to just, adapt to whatever I need to be able to do to get kids to learn.
I think I learned that you kind of just really have to go with the flow. And now, I would tell them that anything is possible and never say never.
What I would say now is I am so proud to be a teacher.
A big thank you, to my staff, to my families, and to the students.
We've lived through something now together that we can say we've done. And I guess I'm hopeful that this will be a reminder to us that, we are all one human race.
We did it. We did the best we could. We learned as much as we could. And hopefully next year it's not virtual and we can have everybody back. But I guess only time will tell.
because they help us learn a lot.
I think they did amazing with the circumstances and the short amount of time they had to bring all of this information to us. It really was amazing.
I mean, they did a great job. It was just the technical difficulties on the computer and all of that stuff, because it was like sometimes the computer would like stop working and we couldn't hear them.
I've learned so much this year because of them.
And they always know how to solve problems if something's going wrong.
I know it's taken a lot out of them to wake up early in the morning, get on the computer for hours and hours at the day, out of their time.
But I mean, I think they handled it very well.
Not easy all the time. So it's a really big thank you.
Healthy Newsworks served over 700 students this year, despite the pandemic. We want to serve many more next year and in the years to come. Remember, we have a goal of raising $10,000 tonight through our Text to Give challenge. To donate, text HEALTHY to 243725. You can also donate at healthynewsworks.org. We so appreciate your generosity. Now back to Mr. Vernomodum.
This was a year of reflection about what's important in our lives, about how our lives were impacted, and how our dreams for the future were changed. Some of those we interviewed took stock of their own lives.
I got to be more physically active. I started running more this off season. I created a training group, just Philly's front office people. They wanted to stay healthy, so it was like, hey, let's just do workouts in my garage. I'll do it in my garage, put it on Zoom. And then now it's grown to the point of now we're training with Special Olympics athletes in Pennsylvania. I can't wait to travel. I can't wait to travel and visit people and go to different countries and experience cultures and continue to explore.
Like learning musical instruments. So right now I'm learning to play the trumpet. So I play the piano, I play the guitar, and I play the trumpet.
I picked up a camera and started doing some photography and watching some videos on how, to get really good with the camera.
I've learned that sometimes it's okay just to say, I need a little break. And I've learned how to take weekends off, or not weekends, but 2 days off in a row.
I was waiting for something strong that could change us as a humanity. We can take this opportunity to really put our priorities, prioritize our life as a journalist, as a human, as a mother, each one of us.
Many of us at Healthy Newsworks made new discoveries this year, but we're also looking ahead to do some of our favorite activities again. The song you've been listening to tonight expresses both what we missed and what we long to do. It was written by third graders at the St. Veronica Healthy Hero, a student newspaper, and Rodney Wittenberg, a Philadelphia area musician, producer, educator, and filmmaker.
What cake tastes like. COVID-19.
Can't play out like we used to shout. And learning online is so stressful. I can't do anything because I'm bored. Maybe I can go.
And every day we pray. We pray that the virus don't away.
I hope this Halloween is back to normal.
After the pandemic
I want to start my own YouTube channel that does challenges, pranks, vlogs, and other things.
I hope I can walk outside without wearing my mask and breathe the fresh air.
I also want to travel the world and go on many trips because I've been locked up at home and I don't get to go anywhere anymore.
What I want to do is go on the airplane to Disney World and see Mickey Mouse and Goofy and take pictures with them. They're my favorite characters.
Thank you for spending time with us tonight. This broadcast will be available tomorrow on this website, and a number of the full interviews will be available on this website in the next few days. And we want to thank everyone who's had a hand in this event tonight.
COVID-19. What cake tastes like. COVID-19.
Can't play out like we used to shout. And learning online is so stressful. I can't do anything because I'm bored. Maybe I can go.
And every day we pray. We pray that the virus is going away.